And we're live on the video, and Steve and I are supporting the home team here. I'll talk first so I can show off my Ballast Point shirt. Steve?
And here is my Ballast Point shirt. I don't know if you can see it in that light.
There you go. All right. Taking up the home team. All right, let's see who we got in the chat room today. We've got Donald and Steve and Brett, who was first to class today. Is big better? That is the question we're all asking. Johnny Quinlan is back, and Dorothy is back from her long hiatus, and Norris and Sandy and Alistair is here from tomorrow in New Zealand. All right. I am now sipping a, what am I sipping? I'm sipping no. What am I drinking?
You are drinking a... Let's see, I forget.
Not even keel. I always want to say it's even keel, but it's not.
Longfin.
Longfin.
It's a lager.
A Longfin lager from Ballast Point. All right. Can hear you fine, Dan says. All right. Let's go ahead and do a little audio check here. And then we'll get rid of Steve after that. Here we go.
What? Get rid of me?
Okay, you're wrecking the audio test. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com. Okay, you're wrecking the audio test. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com. All right, everybody get that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, well, you are now officially banished. Goodbye, Steve.
Goodbye.
That says unmute yourself. There you go. Now he's muted. Here we go. All right, now we can get started with the show. We got a lot to do recording-wise, so let's get going. Here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Macintosh bias. Today is Sunday, October 4th, 2015, and this is show number 543. I am so stoked about Chit Chat Across the Pond this week. I got to have Megan Maroney of the Twit Network on the show, and I don't know if you guys have heard her before, but she's fantastic. And I asked her to come on to talk about kids and tech, because my kids are old news now, and she's got younger kids. And I thought it might be something we haven't talked about in a long time. We had an absolute blast. And unfortunately for you, though, you're going to have to listen to me talk about some other stuff before you get to hear Megan. I wanted to start out with some feedback from you. I said I wanted feedback, I wanted corrections, and they're still coming. Dave Gerlitz sent this to me, sent me an email. He said, Allison, hi there. I'm taking you at your word about giving you feedback. On a recent show, you talked about one of your listeners, Darren, speaking up about the text on the email and how hard it is to read. You responded and said that you had fixed the problem by reducing the width of the banner across the top. My email still has that problem. Could you please look into reducing the size of that banner for me too? Love the show, and I listen every week. Cheers, Dave. Well, I'm busted. When I wrote that up originally, and what he's talking about, again, if you don't remember what I'm talking about here, is the NosillaCast News. That's the newsletter you can sign up for that lets you know when something's going on with the show. When I originally wrote it up, though, I had figured out how to make it stop, how to make the banner small. But I had only figured it out for the one-off newsletter that I sent out announcing that there was no live show that weekend. There's another one, the main newsletter is RSS driven, and it goes out automatically. So every time I post a podcast, you get the RSS gets updated, the RSS feed gets updated, and that causes that email to go out. So I had fixed the one-offs, but I hadn't actually fixed the RSS one, which is the one he was talking about. And I knew that I hadn't fixed it, and I forgot to go back and finish fixing it. When I tried to fix it the first time, for the life of me, I could not figure out how to get it stop showing the big wide banner. I'd replaced it with the little logo instead of the big wide banner, and that's what it showed when I went into the editor. But no matter what I did, it was still the big one when it went out. So I went back over to MailChimp, which is the site where I drive all of this information. It showed my very small square logo. So I was looking, trying to figure out how to change to a new template, because I thought if I could tell it new template, then I'd be able to start over instead of trying to edit the old one, which wasn't working. His email prompted me to go back, and I finally figured out how to do it. So now with a new template, I was able to drop in my square logo and previewed it, and I had success. It looked narrow in the mobile preview. Yay! I dropped in some text under the image, and I fought with a really annoying editor trying to get it centered without success. And I messed it, at least until it showed up narrow in the mobile preview. Okay, good. Then I dropped in the RSS block that goes out and grabs my latest item from the RSS feed, like I was talking about. And that's, the summary, show notes, and links. That comes from my RSS feed. So I put in some code that says, go call that information. And now it was sort of wide, definitely requiring scrolling left to right when it was on mobile. So I'm broken again. I fooled around with some stuff, and then I got it to where it was maybe 2 words wide. So that would be about 100 pages of vertical scrolling just to read the summary. So I can have it way too wide, or I can have it way too narrow. I realized then that I could see this hairline box around the RSS code. So it was sort of like in a block that was indented. I tried to copy and paste the RSS code out of the box, but it stayed super indented and looked worse than before. All right, we're making a lot of progress now. Finally, I started with a brand new template. I dropped in the image from scratch, and it invited me to put a caption on it, which I dropped in, and it formatted beautifully. Centered text, it looked perfect. Then, instead of using the RSS template block that they suggested I use, I dropped in a plain text box, and I copied and pasted in an unformatted version of that RSS code, and it worked. While I was at it, I finally got around to changing the bottom stuff that said some glop about sending mail to me, like paper mail to an address I made up, and it had the wrong copyright. It wasn't true. And instead, I put in my real Creative Commons license that says you can do everything but make money off my content as long as you give me attribution. With any luck at all, you should get a nicely formatted NosillaCast news on both mobile and desktop this week. The good news is that I know that you're going to tell me if it didn't work. Huh? Yeah. That was harder than it should have been, I thought, Alistair. I don't know why it was so hard, but I learned a lot about how to do it. And they do have good videos and stuff and instructions on how to do it, but it was harder than it should have been. Okay, so I have a problem, and I think I talked about this last week, but nobody's fixed it for me, and I'm going to keep talking about it until somebody fixes it for me. Over on my iPhone, a long time ago, I put in a text shortcut that changes NC into NosillaCast. I don't want that on my Mac because I named my file names are NC_2015_10_4. That's how it works. So I want it to say NC, but that thing has leaked over from my iOS devices through iCloud, I'm sure, into my Mac. So I went through on all of my devices and I deleted that shortcut so that it didn't exist. In fact, I even changed it, I think, to be NCA or something like that. I forget what I changed it to on the iPhone, but I changed it on my iPhone, my iPad, my MacBook, and my MacBook Pro, and it still keeps coming back, and it's driving me nuts. Steve CZ seems to have unmuted. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, try NCAA.
NCAA. Okay, that's great. That's a big help. That's not what I want. Yes, I have leaky iOS devices. Could somebody figure this out for me?
I think they have waterproof for those iOS devices.
Steve says we need to waterproof those iOS devices. Okay, go away. All right. Let's see. I want to say one more thing on this. The good news is that I know that you're going to tell me if it didn't work. And I hope you guys will all send a special thanks to Dave Gerlitz for telling me that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Anyway, I do really appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for sending in the feedback. And everybody, keep doing that. When you see something wrong, something that bugs you, like I said, if I can fix it, I certainly will, unless it's really hard. And then I'll just say I did not do it. All right. Well, if you've been following this show for any length of time at all, you'll know that I got a 12-inch MacBook shortly after they were released. It was about 5 months ago. You also know that I had to have it replaced because their fancy new key technology started locking up on me. I had a problem where it would the keys would lock up, and I had to press really hard to get them loose again to get them to work. The good news was when I took it to Apple, they were really good about replacing it on the spot, and they wanted to take it back so they could figure out what was wrong. And, the root cause of these early failures is really important because they want to get it fixed in the manufacturing processes. Well, the sad news is that I have had to replace MacBook number 2. This one worked really, really well. Didn't have any trouble with the keys, but it sort of stopped charging consistently. It wasn't that, the good news was once it started charging, it would charge fully. The problem was it just wouldn't start charging. I've got kind of a dodgy outlet here, and I would plug it in there, and sometimes it wouldn't charge. And the thing about the MacBooks and I guess all the Macs is they make this happy little ding when they start charging, even if you have the lid closed. So I would plug it in, and I wouldn't hear the happy little ding. Well, the first couple times it happened, I didn't notice that it wasn't charging. But after a while, I became attuned to listening for that little ding to see if it would work. Like I said, the outlet's kind of dodgy. It's everything that plugs into it's kind of loose. So Steve gave me a power strip that has the grounding pin on it, so it was locked in nice and tight. And the power strip has a little red light on it, so I know it's getting power. And I plugged it in, and it charged. Yay! But then the next night I plugged it in, and it didn't charge. So I lifted it, I unplugged it, plugged it in, unplugged it, plugged it in, I plugged it into the wall. Now it works from the wall. So I thought, well, wait a minute, something's wrong with the charger. Anyway, went back and forth. And finally, we were up in Big Bear last week, and I plugged it into the wall outlet that has nothing to do with this one, and it wouldn't charge. So I took it into Apple this last Tuesday after a 3-day wait to get a Genius Bar appointment because we have the worst Apple store on earth. And of course, it charged immediately in front of the Genius. I was kind of disappointed in his scientific processes in trying to figure out what was wrong. So remember, it's charging right now, and we plugged it in and unplugged it like 8 times, and it kept charging. He said, well, let's swap out the charger. And I said, well, that doesn't really tell us anything, because if it charges, that doesn't tell you that my charger was bad or the Mac was bad. That doesn't give us any information at all. You need it to actually be failing for that to give us interesting results. Anyway, he seemed to just want to do that. And I asked him, I said, can't you run some diagnostics on the computer first? And he said, no, that won't detect any kind of problem unless it's failing right when it happens. And I'm thinking, it doesn't sound right, but I let him keep going. Finally, since we couldn't get it to fail with either adapter, he decided to do a network boot to his diagnostic tools. Sort of like I told him to at the beginning, but that's okay. Now, in order to connect to the network, things have got to be, he's got to have a lot of dongles involved here because it's only got the one USB-C port. He did the dongle dance to achieve this. He plugged in an Ethernet cable. I think it was Ethernet to USB-C, then USB-C to their digital video adapter. And then he did that because that gave him a pass-through USB-C port so that he could plug into my power adapter and pass that power to the Mac. So he's got to have Ethernet and the wall power at the same time. So he went through these 2 dongles to make that happen. Seemed kind of clumsy. And by the way, if you study design of experiments at all, you know you should try to change as few things as possible. And he's actually introduced like 8 more pieces of equipment into this. But the good news was that after he put all these dongles in, the MacBook failed to charge. He ran the diagnostics, and it showed that my Mac wasn't seeing the correct voltage. He said that even if the power adapter was at fault and completely dead, the MacBook should still have seen a trickle amount of power. Not sure that makes any sense at all, but at least I was able to show him the failure. I'm going to stop because Steve asked me something. Is anything wrong here? And plus I bumped my mic. Oh, okay. Steve had me stop because he wants me to say hi to Johnny Quinlan because Johnny isn't talking yet, and he wants Johnny to talk to him. Hi, Johnny. All right. Well, I might as well get a sip of beer while I'm stopped. A live sewer line to share with the group. That's nice. You always do the most interesting things, Kevin. That's awesome. At that point, he went in the back and he discussed with his manager whether to make me wait for a repair or just let me have a brand new one again. Luckily, it went in my favor, and again, I got a new MacBook. Now, they technically returned my second Mac and then sold me the third Mac again. The reason they do that is you want a new start on AppleCare. I told them, I said, I don't want that old cruddy AppleCare I had before. I want a brand new shiny AppleCare. When I got home and realized it's been 5 months, that actually does matter quite a bit. That's going to extend the life of my AppleCare by that extra 5 months. Anyway, the whole reason I told you this story was I wanted to talk about how I attack configuring a new Mac. Now, many of you are thinking that this is going to be like this giant pain. People hate to set their computers up from scratch. But I got to say, I'm getting pretty good at it now, and it doesn't bother me a bit. In the old days, it meant dragging out boxes with CDs and DVDs in them and trying to find the license code, figure out where you scribbled it down or put the sticker or whatever, or, if we were smart enough to have saved it. Nowadays, it's totally a snap. The first advantage to me is how much of our data is actually in the cloud. I use iCloud to manage the files between my Macs that I use for the weekly podcast production. I use Dropbox for everything else I share with between computers, with Steve, and with other people like Dorothy in the script she writes for me. My photos are all in iCloud Photo Library, so those are all safe too. On this Mac, I only use CrashPlan for offsite backups, and to be honest, I don't think it has that much work to do because everything's in the cloud. I knew that I could hand my Mac to Apple and I could confidently say that I had no problems with them taking it away when they said, "Do you have a backup?" Secondly, so many Macs are in the Mac App Store now that it's super easy to get them back. I use a lot of odd little utilities, but it's easy enough to just go to the websites for those utilities and snag the latest downloads. Need the license key? Well, those are all in one password now, right? And those are synced to my Macs via Dropbox. It is so easy to replace apps now. It's nothing like it used to be. I've done this enough times now that I'm getting pretty quick at it, and I thought it'd be fun to watch the order I load things because it really teaches me what's really important to me. If you haven't had all the problems I've had and your system has worked swimmingly for years, I highly recommend doing a clean install of the OS once a year or so because you will be amazed at how clean and fast your machine is if you clean out that cruft on your machines by starting over. You simply don't load as much stuff as you think you need. You think you need all those apps, but you really don't. Of course, with 3 new laptops inside of a couple months of each other, I hadn't put much cruft on my machine at all, but you get what I mean. You've got cruft, you do. I hope by walking through this, it might encourage at least one of you to go through the mental exercise of doing a clean install from scratch to speed up your machine. Now, of course, my most important apps won't be the same as yours, but I hope it'll be fun to compare and contrast. When I started working on this, I posted to Twitter, Facebook, and Google+ asking what would be the first 5 apps that you would load if you got a new machine or a fresh install. I was overwhelmed at how many people answered this question. I've had to put the data in Excel and I ran some pivot tables on it. So a little bit later, I'll tell you what the top 5 apps on your Macs are. But for now, I want to walk through how I decided what had to be installed immediately. Well, the first thing I have to do when I set up a new Mac is open up Photos because I have to turn on iCloud Photo Library and set it to optimized images in this case, right? Because my MacBook can't take my giant images. But I have 58,000 photos, so I do that first because I know it's going to take forever for those to get down. And the machine, to be honest, is pretty sluggish until it finishes. It wasn't as bad this time as it was last time, so I'm not quite sure why, but it went pretty smoothly this time. The very first app that needs to be installed for me is Dropbox. Without Dropbox, I can't get to 1Password, so I can't install anything else. Now, this is a little tricky step because my 1Passwords are in Dropbox. So if I can't install Dropbox till I have 1Password, I can't install 1Password till Dropbox. Well, luckily I do keep, I know the password to, wait, I got myself tangled. Where do I have it? Let's see. Why are you talking, Steve?
I'm just preparing to talk. In case some witty comment springs to mind.
Oh, like Catch-22 for Podfeet? The first 5 install are not the same as the top 5. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point. Well, luckily I do.
How do you define top 5? Top 5 used?
Well, like your top favorite.
Yeah. All right. I would agree with that.
Yeah, did I say top 5? Or did I say first 5? I
think I want to investigate that.
And by the way, I got to make sure, I sort of forgot to do the post about the pivot table, the graph. So make sure that when I get to the end of this,
pivot.
Thank you. Yeah, when I get to the end of this, say pivot. All right.
Wait, you want me to say it live? What are you talking about?
When I get to the end of talking about installing new apps, make sure I talk about the results because I haven't put that in the show notes and I may forget. Okay.
So you're going to wing it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, no.
Shut up. Mute. Goodbye. Okay, let's see. This might actually be a vote to use iCloud instead for 1Password because once you log in with your iCloud credentials, which you pretty much have to store in your head because Apple makes you enter it so often, you'd have access to 1Password. But in my case, I just bring up 1Password on another device, on my iPhone, my other Mac, or my iPad, look up the password to Dropbox, and then I'm golden. By the way, if you use LastPass instead for your passwords, the question is moot because you'll be able to access your passwords right away because you get them on the web. Next up has to be Text Expander. I simply cannot bear to use a Mac without it. I can't even stand to type the name Text Expander without my snippet shortcut for Text Expander. By the time I've been using this Mac for about 10 minutes and I'm losing my mind because the trackpad isn't set up the way I want it. Off to system preferences. I got to go into the trackpad preferences and turn on single tap to click. I can't stand having to actually click. It's not as bad on the MacBook Force Touch trackpad, though. I kind of like that. So it's not as bad, but I got to do that right away. I also really need to have three-finger drag, but for some reason, Apple decided out of pure cruelty to move it into accessibility, mouse and trackpad options, enable dragging, three-finger drag. Seriously, it's buried that deep. If you didn't catch that, I got a tutorial on how to go find that. You can go check that out. All right, while we're in accessibility, might as well turn on zoom and turn on use scroll gesture with modifier keys to zoom. At my advanced years, I am really fond of being able to hold down the control key and scroll up a little bit to zoom the screen up so I can actually see what I'm doing. Seems to be more so when I'm watching TV at night when it's a little darker and my pupils are dilated and it's harder to focus. But anyway, gotta have that scroll to zoom. So got that done. Well, the podcast is very highly dependent on a niche application called Feeder from reinventedsoftware.com, so that has to be up next. I used to write all my blog posts, and the feed itself that sends the podcast to you is all because of Feeder. It wouldn't exist without it. Luckily, it now supports syncing of settings via Dropbox, so my text and all my server settings are all there as soon as I tell it to sync. I don't have to do any work to set up my syncing. Now, you're going to laugh at what I need next. It's a font of all things. Years ago, I fell in love with a font called Century Gothic, and I use it for pretty much everything. I can't stand using any other font to write the show notes. It just drives me nuts to not have it. The problem is that it originally came with Office 2011, so I have to go to a Mac that has Office 2011 to go find that font. Luckily, I'm a whiz at the terminal now, so I can remote connect into my MacBook Pro and over the network, copy it from /library/fonts back to that location on the MacBook, and I'm in business. Now I am serene looking at Feeder. Well, when you first create an account with a new computer, like I mentioned, it asks for your Apple ID, so your Apple email will start coming in automatically. But hey, who's only got one email these days? You got to go get a Gmail or a Yahoo or a Hotmail or something, right? You got to have one of those. I really appreciate how easy it is to add email in these days. I mean, gone are the hours of trying to configure the server settings. You remember that? Both of mine happen to be Google accounts, so all I do is put in my email address, get my password from 1Password, boom, it all comes in. If you haven't lived through those days, if you're too young to remember that, ask an old person what it used to be like. That was like 3 hours of your life. In fact, you had pop email back in my day, and it wouldn't come in at all. All right, too much productivity going on in this Mac. Now it's time to add some goofing around apps. So I threw on Tweetbot for Twitter and my new favorite messaging app, Telegram. If I don't have Telegram, how are Stephen Getz and I to be full-time enablers for each other to spend money? It's pretty much what we do to each other the whole time. All right, around this time, I realized that my Finder windows were missing some crucial information. Time to turn on view status and path bars so I can see file sizes and number of items along with the path for the folders I'm viewing. Can't stand it without it. I don't need that right away, but I know pretty soon I'm going to look for it and I'm going to be like, why is that set wrong? All right, a quick trip to Finder preferences to show hard disks on the desktop like God intended. All right, with my dessert eaten, time for some more vegetables. I loaded up CrashPlan for my offsite backups. Now that I switch out Macs as often as most people change shirts, I knew it would be easy peasy to tell CrashPlan to simply adopt the most recent backup on my old 1.5-month-old Mac to the new one. It's really cool to be able to do it because it means not having to start from scratch on backups in the cloud. I can just say, yeah, that other one, that's the one you want to go get. While I was in there, I realized I was backing up stuff that didn't really need to be backed up. For example, now that I have photos on this Mac set to only optimized images, why would I want to back those up? Now, the real images on my MacBook Pro are already being backed up, and those are the original images, so that's a different animal. I want CrashPlan doing those. I also realized I hadn't paid attention, and I was backing up Dropbox and iCloud. Well, those are sort of like backups already, and they're both backed up on my real Mac on my MacBook Pro to my local and my offsite storage. So it doesn't make any sense to back up Dropbox and iCloud. All right, got that sorted. Time to get some metrics going. Off to download iStat menus. I have to confess, it wasn't any of the really cool features that I use that made me realize I needed iStat menus back. It wasn't being able to see my CPU load or my fan speed or how fast my network was. It wasn't any of that. It was a little tiny calendar icon that I like. I have this little tiny red icon that shows me the date, and without it, I got no idea. I know the dates on my watch, but I don't think to look there yet. I need that little tiny icon. So up I loaded iStat menus, and I did put all those other indicators up there because I need to see when Photos is chewing up all of my CPU speed, which does seem to have happen from time to time. All right, by this time, my menu bar is completely crowded, and especially on the 12-inch screen, I've got it full of junk now. I've got so much glop in the menu bar, I can't see them all, so it's time to install Bartender from Bartender, what is it called? MacBartender.com. Anyway, it is a fabulous little app that lets you organize your menu bar apps into a single bar, or into a second bar, I should say. So you can keep some stuff on your main menu bar and then some stuff on the lower bar. And I really, really love using that utility. It really, really helps. But when I went to install it, my license key wouldn't work. I wrote to the folks at Bartender. They got back to me like pretty much instantly. It turns out a major upgrade to Bartender had come out, and I had completely missed the memo. So it was Bartender 2, and I was trying to use a Bartender 1 license. They did not make me upgrade. They told me about the new version. They told me about Bartender 2, but they gave me a link to download the old version, which I thought was really cool. I love this app so much, I gladly paid the giant fee of $7.50 US to get the upgrade, and I was in business. Finally, in my top of first apps, in my top, let's see, finally. And finally, in my top list of first apps I needed to load, I had to install both Drop Shadow and App Delete. These go together because I use them so often I keep them in the toolbar of every Finder window. I can be anywhere and I have an image and I just drag it up to Drop Shadow to make a nice shadow or border for the website. Do that all the time. In fact, you should see how many images are in the show notes this week. App Delete is also great to have in the toolbar because you just drag the app you want to nuke onto it, launches App Delete, and you can kill it from there. I needed it already, even though I'm only doing essential apps, because Charlotte had me reinstalling Bartender and I wanted to make sure I got rid of all the P-lists and such. So when I was trying to figure out what was originally wrong with Bartender, which turned out to be a license key problem, anyway, we were installing and reinstalling Bartender, and I needed to make sure I had it cleanly deleted. So I had to have App Delete from reggieashworth.com. Now, I want to make sure that I'm clear about what I was talking about here was the top apps from a what do you need first perspective. These are not necessarily my favorite apps, although many of them are. It was a process of trying to understand what I needed to install first. Now, I'm wondering whether I'm going to be smart enough the next time to actually go look up this blog post and see if it's changed, or not have to figure it out next time what I have to do. I should be able to go boom, 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 boom. I really hope my MacBook isn't going to be doomed yet again, but just in case, now I know the order that I really like to install the apps. But what about you? All right, now I got to look up the graph. Let's see, Stevie's talking to me. What? A horse is back? You're staying up late, horse? Yay. I think, horse, you're in Europe somewhere, right? He's digital. Oh, Dr. Dream's back. Okay, I got to find my graph. And I've got to remember. Actually, I'm going to FTP this up so I can send you guys a link so you can see it. It's kind of fun. Hold, please. There you go. Here we go. There. And here. I got to really remember to put this up. Let's see. I think this will be the URL to it. First, 5 apps.jpg. If that link works, tell me if you guys can see that. All right.
Yes, we can see it.
Good, good. Okay. All right, so let me hide this. Now I'm going to wing it. By the way, I've been doing a bunch of winging. Can you guys tell the difference at all?
Oh, pivot.
Yes, pivot. This is it. But I do have to remember to put it in the show notes too, because I forgot.
The graph does look good. Pie chart.
Pie chart. All right,
Yes.
good. Okay. All right, here we go. I feel like I should do a drum roll or something with how much drama I've given to the excitement of this this data. But the number one app. Oh, and I should wait. Did I? Yeah. No. Well, it turns out the number one app, the very first app. No, that's not actually true. It's hard to say what the statistic exactly means. All right. The most mentioned app by the people who filled out the survey was Dropbox. 14% of you said, I put Dropbox on in the first 5 apps that I put on. The number 2 was 1Password, coming in at 10%. Number 3, Text Expander, yay, just like I said, at 7%. Very interesting what number 4 was to me. Very surprising was Chrome. 5% of you said Chrome was in that top 5. Now remember, again, this is not necessarily your favorites, might be your favorites, but it's what do you need first. And number 5 was Evernote, coming in at 5%. The next few were getting down into the 3 or 4%. We had OmniFocus, then iStep menus, Office at 3%, which I find really, really interesting. Only 2 people apologized for what was in their list, and they were both apologizing for having Microsoft Office on their list. Next up is Hazel, then Bartender, another great one. Firefox, so 2 browsers made the top ones, and then Lightroom. All the other apps added up to 41%. So there's a lot of other one-offs that people, just really liked. But I thought that was really interesting that we had Dropbox, 1Password, Text Expander, Chrome, and Evernote taking up the top spots. I want to thank everybody who turned in their votes on that. At first, I had this vision I would call out the names, but it was so many people. I am not going to be able to do that. So anyway, I thought that was fun. And the pie chart, of course, is on podfeet.com. I winged it. Uh-oh, Steve left. He's not even here anymore. Oh, maybe he's going to put the spaghetti squash in the oven. All right, save. What did Steve say last year?
Squash is in the oven.
Squash. We have squash in the oven. Dorothy, I'm going to do what I said. I'm just going to put garlic and olive oil on it and eat it. Yum. All right. People really had fun with that. It was very interesting how much people got excited. Chrome, yuck. All right, let's keep going here. Did they like my graph? How exciting. Okay, here we go. Like it's, if you have so much noise, I can tell when you come in, I just hear whoosh. I think that's your fans. Yeah, that's nice. All right. Here we go. Back in the very, very early days of podcasting, there was a thing called the Conversations Network. It was nonprofit set up by a guy named Doug Kay. Doug's idea was to create a series of podcasts by a global team of volunteers who would do interviews. Imagine the excitement of that age. I mean, you really got to realize how crazy it was back then. This was around 2004, 2005. We're just realizing we were in the wild, wild west of broadcasting. There were no rules, We could talk any way we wanted to. The FCC couldn't tell us what to do. You could release shows any old time. You didn't have to have a schedule. It was a crazy time. Anyway, Doug realized that he had a problem with all these volunteers. They were doing these interviews and their audio levels were all over the map. Their voice was really loud. The person they were interviewing, maybe they didn't shove the microphone in their face far enough. It wasn't loud enough. So the audio levels were just awful, and that really bothered him. So Doug dreamed up the idea of a tool that would make the levels all the same across the interviews, within a given interview at least. So he got some developers, Bruce and Malcolm Sharp, along with Norman Lorraine and Russell, don't know how to pronounce this, Heistumen, and he got them to turn this into a reality. They created a very simple tool called the Levelator. I'll get this yet. Volunteer reporters for the network were required to drop their uncompressed audio onto the levelator and run it through that before they were allowed to submit it. And that made that audio listenable, because there's nothing worse than it being too loud and too quiet. Too loud and too quiet makes you crazy. The best thing that ever happened to podcasting was when Doug made the levelator available for free for all podcasters. It became an integral part of every podcaster's toolkit. Even if you thought things were fine, you just run it through the levelator before publishing, because why not? It didn't take that long and it was going to be better. You may have heard me refer to it from time to time, especially if you've ever been to the live show, Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time at podfeet.com/live. If you've ever been there when I'm working on interviews or I'm putting somebody's audio in, you'll hear me say, well, that's close enough. The levelator will fix the rest of that, because that has been part of my process ever since Doug gave it away. Over the years, whenever I would hear a podcast that I was, if I was struggling to hear one voice and then covering my ears because the next voice was too loud, I would always write to the creators and beg them to use the levelator. I remember working with the SMR podcast guys, torturing the Pocket Show's Paul Wheatley. By the way, Paul, I still miss that podcast. Bring it back. Stop pod fading. We loved it. Anyway, I even remember writing to wire.co.uk's podcast owner, Nate Langston, and arguing with him until I convinced him to use the levelator. He felt it was weak to use the levelator for some reason, and I finally convinced him to use it because it was driving me nuts. I even took waveforms and drew pictures, drew lines, saying, this is Katie's voice, this is your voice. Look how different they are. So I think I finally convinced him. He didn't do the show anymore, but they're keeping it going. Well, you'd think there's no problem to be solved here, right? It's nirvana. It's all wonderful. Well, the problem was that Doug and his folks folded up shop in 2010 and they abandoned the levelator. The good news was that they kept the website up and the levelator kept working. But let me give you an idea of how old it was. When it was last released, it was guaranteed to work on everything from Tiger to Lion. So Lion is 10.7, and if you're not paying attention to the numbers, El Capitan was just released. That's 10.11, so that's 4 revs of the operating system ago. We got lucky for 10.8, 10.9, and 10.10. Actually, that's 5 ago, right, 5 ago. Anyway, we got lucky on all those other versions, but our luck started to run out on 10.11. Reports flew all around the internet this week that the levelator didn't work anymore under El Capitan. But then we were thrown a lifeline. Chaz_M posted in a mac-forums.com forum that a clever fellow noted that it might be a case of a missing file in /user/local/lib in El Capitan. Now, he did never identify who the clever fellow was, but Chaz himself compared the Yosemite directory and the El Capitan directory and took a copy of the lib sndfile.1.dylib file out of the levelator package and placed it in /user/local/lib. He restarted his Mac to allow that file to load, and it fixed the issue. Now, a whole bunch of people have used this fix, but that isn't exactly a user-friendly solution. I mean, you could get an update at any time to the operating system, and it would break that, and you might forget how to do it. Well, I told you this entire back history because I had already abandoned the levelator by then. Hey, come on, the levelator left me first, so don't be mad about me abandoning it. With some help from my friends, I'm in a better place now. But again, some more backstory. A few months back, Victor Cajiao of the TerraTech podcast started talking to me about another problem, and that's the problem of loudness variation from podcast to podcast. You know the problem, you're doodling along on your bicycle with an awesome playlist of podcasts, and suddenly the next one is way too quiet. So you crank up the volume, but the next show blows your eardrums out. Paul Figiani from ProduceNewMedia.com, a good friend of Victor's, is personally leading the charge to try and fix this problem. Now, I am not at all a specialist in this field. In fact, Paul is crazy into this, and he teaches Victor, and then Victor puts it in plainer English so that I'm capable of following some of it. So what I've learned from Paul and Victor is that loudness standards were set for television a while back, and that's what made our life so much more pleasant. Now, this isn't universally obeyed. There's still, you know how you're not supposed to have commercials louder than they should be? Well, the way they do that is they kind of bring down the volume of the show, and it's still louder, but it's much less annoying than it used to be. It used to be horrible. Paul wants to bring that same loudness standard to podcasting, and I am all for it as a consumer of the medium. I mean, I think this would be fantastic. However, whenever Paul talked about it for podcasters, it was way too hard for Allison's little brain to understand how to comply with this mythical standard. I mean, I understood, at a global level what he was talking about, but it was just too hard. And it was, I'm pretty geeky, but it was way beyond me. I told Victor, I said, look, I'm on board, but I'm going to do it as soon as there's a push button as easy as the levelator that will let me comply with those loudness standards. About a year went by, and just recently, Victor told me that Paul told him about a tool that would finally give me that one button push that would allow me to comply with the loudness standards. Better yet, it would give me the levelation that I got from the levelator, what I'd been getting all these years, but both in one tool. The app is called Auphonic Leveler from auphonic.com. George, the developer, has an interesting business model for Auphonic. You can use it as an online service where you upload your files to their server and run the tool against it and then get delivered a processed file. In fact, it can FTP it straight to your server, I think. Or you can buy a tool for the desktop. The online tool is free if you only need 2 hours a month of audio processed, which is not enough for the NosillaCast because it's starting to run really long. But they also have reasonably priced options for more time. They have things like $11 a month for 9 hours of audio processing. Or you can buy credits in packs and just use them when you need them, which I think is a really cool idea. The credits are an especially good deal because you get the first 2 hours free. It's not like only deadbeats use the 2 hour one. If you're a paid subscriber, you still get those 2 hours free, and then you just pay for what you need beyond that. So that's pretty cool. But I'm not a fan of monthly payments. I like to just pay for stuff up front. So I bought the standalone tool. There are some limitations with it. Oddly enough, the standalone tool doesn't do quite as much as the web service. The web service will also add what's called ID3 tags, which is how you see my logo and things like skip when shuffling, because you don't want to be listening to music and suddenly have my voice come piping through when you're on a nice jog and shuffling, that kind of thing. What else does it do? Oh, it adds the genre. So it can add all those ID3 tags all within that web interface, but the desktop version does not do that. And so anyway, I didn't like the monthly payment, so I bought the tool. But you're going to kind of cough at the price here. It's $89 for personal and non-commercial use. Now, I do make a very small profit off the NosillaCast, especially now that I don't get to pay for a party for the NosillaCastaways every year at Macworld. Anyway, I do make a profit now. So I wrote to the developer, George, and I said, do I still get to do it, even though I make a little tiny profit? And I gave him an idea of how much money I make. And he said it was fine for me to buy the personal license. Now, they also have a commercial license for up to 5 users. That's $349. And if you got a bigger employment than that, you can just negotiate with him. Very flexible, a lot of different ways to do it. But this is not a cheap tool. At first, I had buyer's remorse about the $89. But as I worked through how to use the tool with Victor, I realized how much Auphonic could actually do for me. Like I mentioned, it's already got loudness compliance and leveling, but it'll also convert the file to an MP3. The way I've been doing it was I run it through the levelator, and then I have to go over through iTunes to do that. It'll also has what? Oh, that English didn't work. I'm doing a lot of work here, not talking to anybody. What am I missing?
When English goes bad.
Steve says, when English goes bad, if you didn't hear that. Oh, we're talking about El Capitan. Biggest problem is having to upgrade Bartender. Oh, I guess I'm glad I updated Bartender.
So not too many apps in the chat room have popped up as not working. There are a few here and there, but no biggies that I can see. Well, except for maybe Sandy. There's
a really good site that's listing what's working and not working. Where did I put that? I'll post it over in the Google Plus community and make a note.
So Horst says it's time to do another European tour.
Oh, that's a good idea. Where is Horst?
UK. Hey, Horst, were you at the meetup with Dawn?
Remember, they can't hear you unless I turn on that thing that causes your voice to go double. Do you want to be able to talk?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. He can hear you if he's on the... Wait, how can he hear you? No, he can hear you if he's watching it in Google Plus. He can't hear it if he's on the app. How does it work with voiceover? Oh, Dan just asked how well Phonic works with voiceover. Actually, I have had some success with it. Dorothy and I have been working on scripting it, and I turned on voiceover to try to figure out what these buttons were called, and one of them wasn't labeled. So I wrote to George, and he went, "Oh yeah, I'll fix that." So that was a good sign. I should test it. No, it isn't Roaring Apps. I'll get it. When I'm done recording, I will check it out. Or I'll let you guys know what it is. G plus work network. Okay. Where was I? Let's see. Where did I put that? I think, oh, I know where I can find it. Hang on. I'm going to find it right now. History earlier today. Flickr. Hello. TED Talk, photo editing, Mac Fun. I'm getting there. Hang on. Screen cap. Where is it? This might take longer than I thought. Maybe not. Okay. I don't care about that. Close that. Leave page. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. I will find it. I will find it later. Tessa, what are you doing in here? Okay, what was I just saying here? The way I've been doing it was I run it through the levelator, and then I have to go over to through iTunes to do that. Wait, you're making noise. Oh, you're taking the collar out. Hey, don't stop it. Steve's in an awfully good mood. He's kind of silly, I'm afraid. Yeah, Dan, send me a note and remind me to go check a little more of it. I'm not great at it, but I can tell you if the buttons are labeled and if the pull downs work and stuff. You could also go to auphonic.com and try using the website. That would be another way to do it, because that see if that's accessible. That would be interesting. All right. On top of that, it also has a way to process the audio to remove noise and hum. Now, I have pretty clean audio, but once in a while, there's a problem with a recording from someone else. Last week, George from Tulsa's recording was great, but it had kind of this low-frequency rumble underneath his audio. It wasn't bad, but when I heard it during the live show, as I assembled the recordings in GarageBand, I thought, you know what the heck, let's try to fix it in Auphonic. I dropped his original WAV file onto Auphonic, clicked the box to denoise, dehem, and I set it to auto. I didn't even try to micromanage how it was done. And in just a few seconds, I had a beautifully clean recording, and it wasn't distorted. I don't know if you've ever played with these things that supposedly get rid of noise, but they always sound weird afterwards. They sound all distorted and strange, but not with Auphonic. It was perfect. I'm really, really excited about that. Steve has been helping me try to perfect the settings in Auphonic, starting with what Victor taught me. Steve noticed starting a couple of weeks ago that my audio sounded harsher, he said. It didn't sound as round, and that was the only way he could think of to describe it. We worked and worked and worked on what I've been doing, and we think it's because I have a compressor on my voice in Audio Hijack as it's being recorded, but Auphonic is applying a peak limiter after the fact as well. Both of these tools help to keep the maximum peak level of my voice from going too high, and we think they were fighting with each other. It was kind of doubling maybe. I'm not sure we've got it perfect just yet, but we're working on it. You might have noticed it was a little bit nicer last week than the week before. I wanted to tell you about all this, not because I expect you to go out and become a podcaster. It would be awesome if you did, if you got something fun to tell us about, but rather, I think the process I went through to get Auphonic in place before Levelator died is an important lesson to think about, the tools that you love to use, and maybe have a plan for what you're going to do if they go away. It's always important to have that plan, especially if you know they're being abandoned. When Apple abandoned Aperture, I ripped that Band-Aid off right away going over to Photos. And I know the natural tendency is to hang on to these things as long as you can, but a lot of times by the time you go to convert to the new tool, nobody remembers how to convert your data. You know, I hear people all the time with some like super old format. What's the one before iWorks and Apple had some editing formats? Anyway, where people wait so long, nobody has the conversion tools anymore. So I think it's a much better idea to start looking at this stuff when you first smell that something's going to get abandoned, or you're pretty sure it's going to get abandoned. And I'm really glad I converted to Auphonic before the Levelator died. I could still use the levelator with this fix, but it just sounds like that's going to be a world of hurt over time. A lot of us really wish that would get open source. That would have been really cool if they'd done that. Maybe they still will. My next project in this realm is to figure out how to replace GarageBand because I'm still using 6.0.5 in my workflow. I really do need to get off it since it's the old version. It's not that new and totally useless for podcasting version that they came out with, more than a year ago. And finally, the best part, this massive change in my workflow means that Dorothy has something new to script for me because now she has to figure out how to start Auphonic, get it to run the levelation for me, and then add the ID3 tags using, I think we found an ID3 tag editor we're going to buy. And she's just having a ball doing doing all the scripting for me. All right. Yeah. Okay. Why, I'm just about to talk about extensions, Steve. This week, Bob Correa posted something awesome in our podfeet.com/Google Plus community. I hear you, Steve. Were you going to answer?
No, that was a mistake. Never mind the man behind the curtain.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. All right. That's good. This week, Bob Correa posted something awesome in our podfeet.com/Google Plus community. He created a tutorial for us on how to enable the new extensions feature in Apple Photos. This is awesome on so many levels. First of all, this is the feature I've been most looking forward to in El Capitan. Extensions in Photos means we can get back that functionality that we lost when Apple abandoned Aperture, like we were just talking about. We can buy extensions from third parties that let us do non-destructive editing with these cool tools. I had not yet figured out how to make these go or know about what ones were out there when Bob posted his tutorial, so I was thrilled. The ones he's using are from MacFun, and I actually have license codes from MacFun on for a couple of the extensions, and I'm going to be doing a full review. But with Bob's tutorial, I knew how to get started. Of course, it made me doubly happy that he used my favorite tool, Clarify, to create his tutorial. He took some screenshots with Clarify, dropped in some arrows, some boxes, and then a little bit of text to explain the steps. It's only 5 steps long, but it perfectly illustrates how to get extensions to work in Photos. When he was done, he simply hit the Publish to Clarify button, created a web-based version for free at bobbycode.clarify-it.com. I love it when you guys create tutorials. So if you want yours featured on the NosillaCast, be sure to send it on over. And if you don't have Clarify yet, I figure there's somebody back in the far left corner over there that doesn't have it. Go over to clarify-it.com and download the free trial for Mac and Windows.
Sandy reminds us it's time to stand.
Oh, is it? Did I already stand to 12 hours? I might have stood 12 hours already. No, I can't have. Why isn't it yelling at me? I've only got 10. Oh, because I've got on Do Not Disturb. All right. I shouldn't have said Mac and Windows. Close enough. All right. Cover your ears, Kevin. How you doing, Kevin? You doing any better? Been worried about you. I know you haven't been feeling well. All right. Now all I got to do is find where is Chit Chat? Here we go. 10.4. Nope. No NosillaCast file. Nope. No NosillaCast audio. I've been using Hazel to clean up my desktop lately. It's really fun. Where's Chit Chat? Oh, did I leave it in audio hijack? There it is. Oh, I probably should have checked that. And that should go in audio into there. All right. Hope it's good. I didn't check it. Megan was so fun. I like her a lot. I am really excited just to get to know her. She's just really fun. Let's see, what is that? I know I don't want that. Okay, get rid of that.
This is my James T. Kirk scene. They always had him with the light right across his eyes.
Oh, yeah. It was kind of at an angle, though. I think you got to tilt your head. Okay, Steve is just Did you start drinking at 3 or something? What are you doing? I don't think he did. Oh, man, that's good beer. All right. Shh. Steve, mute. Okay, there we go. .com and download the free trial for Mac and Windows. Why is your audio coming through, dear? You didn't unmute or didn't mute. Now you're muted. Okay. Okay, symbols check over there that doesn't have it. Go over to clarify-it.com and download the free trial for Mac and Windows. It's that time of the week again. It's time for Chit Chat Across the Pond. And for the first time ever, I have Megan Maroney from Twit on the show today. How are you doing today, Megan?
I'm doing great, Allison. Thanks so much for having me on.
I tricked Megan by asking her on the air whether she'd come on my show, so she couldn't just go, no.
I would have said yes anyway, but yeah, that was a good trick. I'm going to have to use that one.
Aren't you sweet? Well, I am loving having you on the Twit network. Well, since you did it for me, obviously, but you're on iOS Today is where I get to see you the most, but you're also doing Tech News Tonight. You said you were on 5 shows the last couple of days?
Well, I also do a really short show called i5 for the iPhone. It's about 10 minutes long, just 5 quick tips about iPhones and Apple Watches. I sneak some Apple Watch tips in there. And then I do some product reviews for before you buy. And then we're also recording our holiday shows in advance. So that's why I was doing some extra shows.
Oh, okay. So there's going to be new shows at the holidays?
In the holidays for our news shows, we're doing just topics on one big topic. So like, robotics or AI or diversity and technology. So we're recording those beforehand so that we get to take a break over the holidays.
Oh, that's very nice. Very nice. Well, I think you're a fantastic addition. I know you were on the original Screensavers, right? Many, many years ago.
Yes. I was last on the Screensavers in 2003. Then I went and had a baby and did not want to commute to San Francisco. So I freelanced. I did a lot of freelance work for Microsoft in the meantime. And then I also hosted a podcast with Leo back in the beginning of Twit called Jumping Monkeys. That was parenting in the digital age.
I remember Jumping Monkeys. That was fun.
Yeah, we did that about 2 years ago. It was back when we were only a audio network. I could come in my pajamas and do it.
Now you have to have a makeup person.
Yeah. The makeup person is unfortunately me. And sometimes I don't do the best job, but Yeah,
I remember when Leo said, yeah, we're going high def. This is going to get really scary.
It is. Yeah. You do what you can and hope that what really matters is what we know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is what matters. And what you know, and I don't know anything about right now is kind of a state of the union of where we are with technology for kids. Because you've got much younger kids than I do. My kids are all old and everything. And by the way, little hint, it's really fun to have kids you can drink with. So there are fun things to look forward to. But so you've got
legally.
Kids. Legal. Oh, right. Legally. Legally in the United States. By the way, did you know the drinking age is 5 in France? But if you're under 5, you can drink at home.
Wow.
Fun facts to know and tell. So you've got a daughter and twin boys. Is that correct?
Yep.
And
12-year-old daughter and 12-year-old daughter and 10-year-old twin boys.
Okay, so they've grown up in the tech era, right? They've really been from day one.
Yeah, digital natives for sure. And it's been interesting because, all along I have known a little more about technology than the average person. And I've noticed that really has meant that I've kept technology from them longer than the average person.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
I think because
you know too much?
Yes. We know how addicting it can be, or we know, just how you can dissolve into it, or just, some of the dangers. So, it's not that I've said no technology, but just waiting as long as possible is what our method has been so far. But you can only wait so long.
The closest I got to that was refusing to get my kids a video game console. But then one of the things I figured out is if you want to make your kids really like somebody, tell them that they're allowed to give your kid the one thing you're not ever going to let them have, Like I let Steve's mother know that she could give the kids Lucky Charms because I would never give them Lucky Charms. My daughter's 28 years old. She walks into grandma's house and says, "Where's the Lucky Charms?" Did the same thing with the video game console. Let a friend of mine buy them one. And it was like he was the best uncle ever, because they got that from him.
Yes, for sure. We have been the recipient of many hand-me-down devices from my 2 older nephews. And yes, they are much loved.
Coolest ever, right?
Yes.
So we can go a lot of different angles. Let's start with cell phones. What age are you supposed to give a kid a cell phone these days? I mean, I got my first cell phone at 40, so I hear it's younger than that now.
A little younger, yeah. I mean, I think it totally depends.
Okay, that's enough fun. Let's go ahead and finish this off here. Let's see. All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, take care.
I know I say every single week that I had the best time ever, but I had the best time ever with Megan. I imagine that came through. But that's going to wind us up for this week. Many thanks to our sponsor for helping to pay the bills, the makers of Clarify over at clarify-it.com. Don't forget to send in your dumb questions, comments, and suggestions by emailing me at allison@podfeet.com. Follow me on Twitter @podfeet. Check out the NosillaCast Google Plus community I mentioned earlier. So much fun going on in there. That's at podfeet.com/Google Plus. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, like Horst did after a long time away, a lot of great people in the show this week. It was a lot of fun. Head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed. Whew. Mirror twins. Ooh, okay. Let's see. If you put your ears back on, Kevin, take them off, put them on. Right about there. Check that. Nosilla Castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed. You can dumb apart if you hand him a pencil. Sandy, I know you've probably used that joke before, but that's pretty funny. I really like that. I can just picture him trying to practice reaching out with the other hand. That is funny. It's hilarious. 543. I am so... Number 543. I am so... Alrighty. I need to do some...
You are so what?
So funny.
Ah.
I thought that was hilarious what Sandy said. Did I say something else?
No, you just kept replaying the same piece and ending it with, and I am so, and cutting it.
Oh, I think I was about to say I'm so excited to have Megan on the show.
Ah.
All right, guys. Well, I am exporting. Man, time flies when you're having fun. That was fast. Done. I'm done. It's 6:00. So we should go. It was nice of you guys to join me. Thanks for coming, everybody. Steve, thanks for your hard work over there in the other room.
Anytime, dear. It's kind of tough, but I put up with it.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Whoa. Mute. Steve, mute. Jeez. That was a motorcycle going up the street. All right, guys. Thanks for coming, everybody. Goodbye. Goodbye. All right. Killing the broadcast.